In Scandinavia, we have many old Yule traditions, and one of these traditions is the Yule Goat. The Yule Goat is called a julebuk in Danish. The Yule Goat is often used as a decoration during December, and it is a very simple decoration, which has been created by forming hay into the shape of a goat and then bind it together with a bunch of red ribbons. The origin of the Yule Goat is uncertain, but it does seem that it has its roots in paganism. We know for certain that it has been a widespread tradition throughout large parts of Scandinavia for many centuries, especially in Sweden and Denmark. The Yule Goat tradition most likely started in Scandinavia and then moved further south to other parts of Northern Europe, such as Poland, where there also has this tradition, especially in the northern parts. It is very common that traditions like this spread to other societies with trade and population movement. The reason why I think this might be the case is that the Yule Goat tradition seems to have its roots in the old Viking countries, Denmark, Norway and Sweden. The historical evidence indicates that the Yule Goat is a Norse paganism symbol that most likely has a connection that stretches back thousands of years, and to when paganism was the most common faith in Northern Europe. The Norse god who is associated with the goat is the god Thor, who is the god of thunder, and one of the most important gods in this ancient religion, known under many names, but in the most common tongue it's called Asatro. Thor has two goats, one named Teeth Bearer and one named Teeth Grinder, who always travels with him and pulls his chariot across the sky. One of the Nordic sagas that particularly mention Thor's goats are in the saga of Thor and Loki's journey to the land of the giants. On that journey, on their way to Jotunheim, they make a stop at a house of a farmer, where they decide to spend the night with his family. The farmer was so poor that he could not even offer them any food to eat, so Thor decided to kill his two goats and chop up the meat and put it into a cooking pot and share the meal with the family. The next morning, Thor used his hammer Mjolnir to bring his two goats back to life. The goat is a symbol of Thor, and it is possible that this little saga is the origin of the Yule Goat tradition. It could have been the beginning of sacrificing a goat and using its fur and skull to dress up as a goat. Thor is also known to have a bad temper, and combining Thor's temper and insults while dressing up as a goat could have been a fun activity during Yule. We do know from records dating back to the 17th century that the Yule Goat was one of the most festive happenings that could happen during Yuletide. It was at a time when most of the population lived in small villages and worked as farmers. One of the local servants, called a gårdskarl in Danish, would put on a white sheet and buckle a goat skull onto his head, before he would burst into people's living rooms while knocking over their furniture and shouting insults and obscene language while telling lies about the guest and the host, and sometimes also telling inconvenient truths that all more or less know about each other at the Yule party. The better the Yule Goat is, the more he's rewarded with beer, food and treats. When he has gotten his fair share of the beer and he's done insulting the guests, he will stumble back out of the door onto the cold and snowy streets. In some parts of Scandinavia, the Yule Goat would also hand out small gifts for the children at the Yule party, and the people were very happy when they were visited by the Yule Goat. Besides the entertainment, the goat would also bring fertility and good luck to the household for the coming year, so it was seen as a good thing. The Yule tradition has slowly changed through the years into a more quiet and innocent tradition in the form of a Yule Goat made from hay. The goats are mostly used as a Yule decoration around the house, but they're also sometimes used at the entrance to people's houses to greet the guests during this season. It is not in all parts of Scandinavia where the Yule Goat is just treated as a decoration. Some pagans write small messages with personal wishes on them for the coming year and place them around the neck of the goat before it is sacrificed on the bonfire. Just like the Yule Goat itself, the fire is also a very important element during this season. A tradition that is related to the Yule Goat is the tradition called julebooking, where people from around the neighborhood put on a goat mask and walk around the town singing pagan songs in the week leading up to New Year's Eve. However, in contrary to the Christmas carols, these songs are more sinister and filled with insults for the listener. Goats are often used in European paganism, and in the ancient Proto-Slavic beliefs, they also have a celebration just like Yule, but they call it Kolida. This is a festival that honors the god of the fertile sun and the harvest. This god is named Devak, and this god is represented by a white goat. In the Central European countries around southern Germany and Austria, they have a creator known as Krampus, which also has a pre-Christian origin. Krampus is a half-goat, half-demon-like creature that walks through the cities with torches during the night, looking for houses with children inside. When he smells the presence of a child, he will walk up to the house and look through the window, while scratching his long and dark fingernails across the window. As soon as he spots a child inside, he will burst through the door. Once he's inside, he will either punish the children if they have misbehaved during the year by whipping them or stuff them into his bag and take them home with him where he will eat them. However, if the children have been well behaved, he will reward them with gifts. In Scandinavia, the winter is long, dark and cold, which is why the light and the sun is so much treasured here. As long as the ravens have whispered our ancestors' achievements in our ears, we have used fire to guide our path in the winter months. In our lands, a tradition of fire and ice has been passed down from generation to generation. Every winter, many families in some parts of Scandinavia build a snow lantern, called a snölyktan in Swedish. From where in Scandinavia this tradition originates from is unclear, but it might be from Sweden. A snow lantern is a cone-shaped lantern made from dozens of snowballs, with candles placed on the inside. A snow lantern is often built in the front yard to light up the entire neighborhood and to welcome unexpected guests. This wintertime tradition is known widely throughout Sweden, and both young and old love to participate in it. Of course, there are also built snowmen, or should I say a snow viking, and a snow viking should not stand alone in the darkness of the night. He needs some light beside him. Let's all welcome the dark and cold winter months by building a snow lantern. We should spread the joy and the beauty of these throughout the north and light up our entire neighborhood. The Swedes have many strange traditions, and building a giant straw goat each year is definitely one of them. It is not an ancient tradition to put up a giant straw goat like this, and it is, to my knowledge, only something that is happening in the city of Gävle, north of Stockholm. The history behind this particular goat was to attract visitors to the shops and restaurants in the southern parts of the city. It was on the first day of Advent in 1966 that this huge straw goat was placed at the castle square for the first time, and since then it has been a symbol of Yule for the people in and around the city. Every year the local village of Myra sends a truck full of hay so they can recreate it for another Yule season. The goat's measurements are 7 meters long, 13 meters high, and it weighs approximately 3.6 tons. While this goat seems rather harmless in the eyes of most people, including my own, it has, for some strange reason, been targeted of multiple attacks since it was put up for the first time in 1966. This giant Yule goat has been burnt down lots of times, and it already started in the first year, when it was burnt down on the 31st of December. A few years later, they tried to protect the goat with some chicken wire netting on the inside, but it still burnt down. The 1970s was probably not the goat's most favorite decade. Not only was it burned, it was also sabotaged, smashed to pieces, and even stolen. Some crazy Swede even drove his Volvo into the straw goat, so it collapsed. In 1979, the goat was burned to the ground again, but this time they made a second one, and this one was fireproofed. However, this attempt to protect it was in vain, and it met its fate when it got broken into pieces during December. In 1985, the goat was featured in the Guinness Book of Records for the first time. This was also the year when the 2-meter high metal fence was built around it, which also was protected by security guards. Nevertheless, the straw goat burned down to the ground in January. In 1986 and onwards, 2 goats were built each year. One of them was made by the southern merchants, and the other one was made by the school of Vasa. In 1988, people began to bet on its survival when the English bookmakers started to allow people to gamble on its fate. In 92, both of the goats burned down to the ground. The first one burned down only 8 days after its inauguration, and the second goat burned down on the 20th of December. In 94, the goat went for a trip when it followed the Swedish national hockey team to Italy for the World Championship in hockey. In 1996, webcams was added, and they are still there. You can watch the straw goat from the comfort of your own home during December. The turn of the century would not bring good news to the goat. The goat was thrown into the river, and a year later it was burned to the ground by a Canadian who got arrested for it. He spent 18 days in jail and was ordered to pay a fine of 100,000 kroner. He left the country without paying the fine. In 2005, the goat was attacked and burned to the ground by a group of people dressed as Santa and the gingerbread man, who was shooting flaming arrows at the goat. I'm not kidding. In 2010, the goat was lucky and avoided to go up in flames after arsonists made an unsuccessful attempt to burn it down. On the 17th of December, the same year, a Swedish news site reported that one of the security guards had been offered a bribe to leave his post. Allegedly, someone wanted to steal the goat via a helicopter and transport it to Stockholm. In 2011, they tried to protect the goat by spraying water on it to create a coating of ice. It burned down on the 2nd of December, just a few days after its inauguration. At the straw goat's 50th birthday party, on the 27th of November in 2016, and just a few hours after its opening party, an arsonist equipped with petrol and a lighter burned it to the ground. The organizers said that they wouldn't rebuild the goat this year, so it was replaced with a smaller replica, built by local high school students. This goat was later hit by a car. In 2018, a smaller version of the straw goat that was standing near the main attraction was a victim of an arson attack. The person was of course arrested for it. While it might be a tradition for some people to attack the goat, it is definitely not legal to do so. And I do not encourage you to do so either. As you can see, the odds of its survival during December is not really that great, but it has survived the last 2 years. However, it has never survived 3 years in a row, and it might not make it through this December.